level and level acceleration, as the case may be. We also focus on cultural development, shaping, and design. We believe that organizations can transform themselves to deliver results if given the opportunity to do that very, very well. We've been privileged to have a few brands in the market with which we deliver the values here, which includes our institute, our HR Outlook, which is an annual conference, and other programs that we run in the industry. Please ensure, just like I have tried testing my Zoom and it's been failing me, please ensure you test your own and it is working. See if you can speak, say hi if you can, let's hear your voice, and then see if your data is as fast as beautiful, beautiful. And see if your data is as fast as 20 Mbps. That way you have minimal interruption in this conversation. So just before we get into the crux of the matter too much, I have done a lot of strategy sessions for teams, for organizations, and a couple of boards. So I'll be sharing some of those experiences from here, both as a consultant and also as a staff within an organization organizing strategy sessions. But just before we go further into this, those of us who are here, if you can unmute yourself and speak, or you can chat in the box. Is part of your duty, responsibility for organizing strategy session, or you are a vendor carrying strategy sessions and team building, any one of those two, please indicate so I know how I'm going to tilt this conversation. Question again is, do you organize strategy sessions? Okay, involved in strategy sessions, thank you, yes. Okay, Ada says yes, she organized strategy sessions, yes. Oh, beautiful, Ada wears both hats, yes. She organizes and she is also responsible for driving, yes, okay, fine. Okay, beautiful, Kiru, in-house, you organize in-house, thank you, thank you. Okay, Lawale, organize, perform both roles depending on the expectations at that point in time. Thanks. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for the feedback. Okay, Comfort wants to be involved in it. Okay, okay, that's fine. The session will provide a platform for a discussion around doing it and getting involved in it as much as possible. Okay. Okay, so let's just get into this conversation then. Strategy generally is not just for teams, right? Business strategy has a lot of things in it, so to speak. One, it is mystical. There is always a perception that strategy is some shrouded in secrecy, okay, that it is difficult to understand. It's only the generals and co who are very good, who can understand that very well. And then sometimes it is chaotic. You're trying to set up strategy in a difficult environment where things are not working very well. Or sometimes it is feisty, as the case may be, and we're trying to drive to deliver results. Question is, why do we organize strategy retreats? It could be strategy retreats, it could be team building or team bonding, it could be an away day, as the case may be. It is designed to help us to plan ahead as much as possible. This particular session is going to run in two forms. The first conversation today is going to look at why you're running strategy sessions, why strategy is important. And then the second session is going to look at the administrative end of strategy sessions. Generally, strategy has become the bane of most executive organizations, and they want to achieve results from it as much as possible. A strategy-focused retreat always is designed to bring team members together in order for them to bond together, to take some time off, to walk away from the hustle and bustle of work, and then to pause, look backwards and reflect inside and ensure whether we are still walking in the right direction. I give you a trick I normally use when we run strategy sessions. I usually ask executives that the idea behind strategy sessions is to keep everybody pointing in the same direction. And to help them emphasize the importance of pointing in the same direction, I ask all of them to close their eyes. If we're in a physical class now, I will ask all of you to close your eyes. And while your eyes is closed, I'll ask you to point in the direction you believe is north. Point north. North, south, east, west. Point north. Usually you notice that when they open their eyes, everybody is pointing in different direction, which simply means that north is not easily ascertained as an individual on your own. So the true north of the organization, where the organization is headed to, is not easily ascertained by everybody in the organization. But if you have a compass, everybody respects the compass and follows in that particular direction, wherever the compass points north. Same thing too, strategy retreats are designed to point everybody in the north, the true north of that organization, where the organization believes that they should all progress in order to be successful at that point in time. Again, if you do not run strategy sessions, you end up being driven as an organization, instead of you being the driver at that point in time, instead of you being the leader of your organization and achieving results. You notice that you're in a reactive mode, always reacting to things that are happening around you at that point in time. But it takes a lot of discipline for you to resist the urge to just be traveling in various directions, doing things differently at that point. But once you are focused and you get your strategy session running and you get that strategy in place, then most probably you'll find some success from it at that point in time. And in your strategic planning process, your idea behind it is to look at tomorrow, the challenges of tomorrow, and bring them to the solutions you can provide today. So you plan today for the strategy that you want to achieve tomorrow and deliver results at that point in time. We're going to be looking at a few of those particular areas. Now, there are three primary sections when it comes to your strategic planning process. This particular section is your planning principles. When you're planning your strategy, your planning principles, and then your strategic planning process, and of course, your strategy execution. Why is execution important? Of what use is it that you plan and you did not execute? The planning principle ensures that all the T's and I's are dotted and crossed to ensure that all the resources you need are in place to make it successful. The strategic planning process, on the other hand, then looks at the organization, the competition, and the environment it is in order to craft a direction for the organization. While strategic execution is follow through, flawless implementation. Most times, strategy sessions do not include this strategy implementation, and then we'll get to lose out at that point. Let's take the first one, the planning principle. How do you plan, or what are the strategic planning processes for your various business functions? Before I talk about this, let me just remind us, I am assuming that this is a typical organization. Just in case if this network goes off, please stay on the line. I'll be back online. So this is a typical organization. Let me change what I'm sharing. Okay. So I'm trying to share a whiteboard. I hope you can see my whiteboard. So somewhere here is the corporate organization. The corporate organization C, right? Most probably the MD's office. And in this particular chart, below this corporate organization, you then have various teams. Most times the teams are called functions, HR, finance, IT, right? Or they are business units. Business units are the various product lines or market lines that you have focused on at that point in time. An example, in a bank, you have business line like e-banking, you have retail banking, you have commercial banking or corporate banking, as the case may be at that point in time. If it's a manufacturing concern, for example, look at Guinness. Okay, so you have the corporate organization, you have Origin, you have their stouts, you have their, I think it's HAP it's called, all right? Then you have their malls. So each of those ones are called business units. There is another organization like a CFAX group, as an example. CFAX is a services firm that is into a lot of logistics, as the case may be. So CFAX group will have their port and cargo. They have their airport handling, cargo handling services at the airport. They have their capital, CFAX capital. They have their container town and their logistics firm. So each of those units are called your strategic business unit. A strategic business unit is a unit that is profitable on its own, P&L. It can exist on its own as a business, but it's part of the business that an organization has. Sometimes it's a business unit. In other cases, it is a subsidiary of the parent organization at that point in time. I hope this is clear, right? Now, for some other organization, these units may be, these ones may be strategic business units. They may just be SBUs. They may be SBUs. While this particular one, in this case, are not SBUs, as the case may be. This one here is functions. Will now be functions or departments. These functions or departments can be HR, it can be IT, it can be admin, okay? So when you're crafting strategy, you most well be crafting strategy for, you are going to be crafting what we call corporate strategy or business unit strategy, or you're crafting functional or departmental strategy. In my field in HR, I get to do a lot of HR strategy for a lot of departments, a lot of HR departments, all right? And then at a higher level, beyond what we have shown in this particular case, in some cases, you may be privileged to craft what is called somewhere here, you now have board. Then you may be required to craft board level strategy, board strategy at this point. So you have 4 levels of strategy you're looking at. There's a board strategy, there's a corporate strategy. There's the SBU, which is usually called the business strategy. And then, of course, at this point in time, you then have the functional or departmental strategy. These 4 strategies are all different. They are different. A board strategy is not the same thing as your corporate strategy. Your corporate strategy is not the same thing as your business strategy. And your department strategy clearly is different from those other ones. And each of these strategies, you will be required to organize and plan for them effectively at that point in time. Yes, Patricia, your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. So when someone says organizational strategy, what are they referring to, please?
It's referring to the corporate strategy.
Okay.
Yes.
It's below the board.
Yes, it's below the board. Yes, it's below the board.
Okay.
Okay. So just to put context, the corporate strategy or organizational strategy refers to a decision about what business we are going to be in and which location we are going to do that business. So a corporate strategy looks at where are we going to play in? Are we going to play in Lagos, or we're going to play in the West? Are we going to play in the entire Nigeria, or we're going to play across West Africa? That's corporate strategy. So location, where you're going to do business, is corporate strategy. Line of business we are going to go into is corporate strategy. So are we going to be in manufacturing? Are we going to be in services? Are we going to be in logistics? That is called corporate strategy. Now, when you come under business strategy, you are not talking about which markets, which products. So business strategy is about market and products. Which products are we going to bring to the market? So we're a manufacturing concern, all right? So what products should we manufacture? Which target audience should we give it to? Should we target the high net worth individuals, the middle income earners, the low income earners? All right, so those are around business strategy. Functional strategy are resource strategy. How do we deploy the various resources that we have, or the limited resource we have, to each institution in order to deliver as much results as possible at that point in time? So those are your definition of the various strategy elements. Any other questions and concerns from there? Okay, I see another hand raised up. Yes, Adora.
Okay, thank you, Joel. So I sort of missed what you said when you were talking about the corporate strategy. I know you said location and something else, but I thought you did say what products and services. And I thought I heard that again under the business strategy. So apart from location, at the corporate level, when you're doing strategy, what are you looking at beyond location?
Industry.
Industry.
Industry. What industry do we play in? What sector do we play in?
But I thought already that organization is in, like, for example, now using Guinness, it's already in FMCG. So when you say what industry should we play in, you're already situated in that context.
And so that is called their fundamental, the base, the bedrock. It's called the basic strategy that they must always work with. Business strategy they will always work with. At the point in time, they can just choose to change industry, or they should choose to add additional industries.
Okay.
So the one you see clearly appears to be the manufacturing, as the case may be. But if you walk into that organization at their corporate level, you see that there are other business lines, there are other lines they are in that is different from that particular one at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing on corporate strategy is diversification. Should we diversify or should we stay in one particular area? So diversifying is a corporate strategy issue.
Oh, okay. What about board?
Okay, so board is issue of governance, control, and shareholding and things
Okay.
like that. So that's what board strategy looks at. And also budgeting and all those things. That's where board stops at.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Patricia, is your hand still up?
It shouldn't be.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's go back to our conversation. So the first part is, remember, we said there are three parts to your strategic planning session. There's the planning principles, the strategic planning, and the strategy execution. I will try, because of time, to weave in all the different types of strategy you're going to do while discussing these three areas, as the case may be. When you're looking at your planning, one of the principles you look at fundamentally is what line of business are you in? What are you in? Why did you set up business? And that's your mission. Your mission creates clarity about who you are and what you're doing, okay? And at this point in time, you look at your preferred future, all right? What kind of future you're looking at? Your mission is in alignment with what we call your MVV. Your MVV is your, let me, where's my annotation? So your MVV, in strategy sessions, we usually refer to MVV. Your MVV is your mission, vision, values, your MVV. What's the mission of the organization? The mission is why we open business, why we open shop, what are we into? Coca-Cola, as an example, is into refreshments. Revlon, if you know Revlon, Revlon is into beauty and cosmetics. All right. GT Bank is into financial services. So that's the mission of that particular organization. Your vision is your future state, where you want to get to, what you want to become in the future. Most times it is an overarching goal that is beyond your daily activities, that looks beyond what you're working on. Your mission becomes a means to an end, a means to that particular vision, as the case may be. An example is, in the past, First Bank wanted to be, Access Bank wanted to be the #1 financial institution in Nigeria. So that's their vision. First Bank today says they want to be the clear leader in the African market. So that's their vision, as the case is at this point in time. Your values, which is the third alphabet in MVV, your values refer to the principles that guides decisions within the organization, within how we operate. So your values begin to speak to things like integrity, professionalism, the ethics that drives what you do, what you get involved in and what you will not get involved in at that point in time. Now, according to a Sox proverb, it says, if you don't know where you're going, any path will get you there. And your MVV is exactly what you need to tell you about where you are going to. Your strategy session must deliver on your MVV first. If you already have your mission, vision, and values in your organization, in that case, your strategy sessions before you start will revalidate those particular MVV. You ask yourself at that particular session, is our mission still valid for the next 5 years? Is our vision still valid ahead as we progress? Are these values still supportive of the line of business we are in? If you have a yes, 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 yes across them, then you go into your strategy session. If you do not have a yes across them, you will pause the strategy retreat and focus on recrafting your MVV so that we can all work together. Now, sometimes your MVV becomes stale because those who crafted it perhaps are the old leaders of that organization, and some of them have moved on. Some of them are tired now. At this point in time, you have new sets of people in the organization and they don't buy into those MVV, or the market has moved, the industry have moved, certain parameters in the economy and the political system has changed. So your MVV is no longer valid. So there is need to revalidate it at that point in time in your retreat. Sorry. Okay, so some of the things we're supposed to look at is to review our strategic planning session, explain the critical components of your strategic planning cycle, develop and execute a strategy plan, and address concerns that you may have in the long term with this. Now, there are some myths, there are some concerns people have about strategy. And then they say one of them is that most people plan. That's a lot of people plan for strategies, but they don't always achieve results. But it's not true. Very few persons actually get involved in strategic planning. Some say planning takes too much time and work, and so it bogs them down, so they don't do it. But that's not the truth. Strategic planning is a short-term thing, although execution is long-term. Planning usually takes 5 to 10% of your time if you do it very, very well. Remember, most strategic plan that we go for is like 3 days. We'll go on Friday and come back on Sundays. And also, that's like 3 days in a whole year. But don't see it as just those 3 days. Before the first day of that strategy retreat, a lot of planning work, pre-work has gone in before that particular day. And after that particular day, there's a lot of work that goes in before we have a final document. In reality, strategy takes 6 to 8 weeks to plan. And 6 to 8 weeks is almost 2 months. 2 months in a year is equivalent to 15 to 20% of the year. So it costs you about, on the average, 15% of your time, execution time of an annual time, in order to plan for your strategy for that particular year. There's also a myth that says planning is rarely looked upon as an investment. Come see, come sir. Sometimes people don't plan, and some people go with the flow, as the case may be. All right, but that becomes very reactive, and you never get the highest results for what you plan to get at that point in time in what you are doing. The best planning methods are based on complex strategies. So they say, but it's not true. You can plan with basic strategy issues around your organizations, the things you're looking at, to ensure that you're able to get as much value at that point in time. Then planning should be concrete, not flexible. No, no, no. In fact, planning should be extremely flexible so that it responds to situations in the market. It bends in order to adjust based on what you find within the market, within the economy, and within the external environment. But it doesn't break. It doesn't break. So you are able to continue to produce results at that point in time. I just finished explaining how long it takes for you to plan, and then using a Pareto principle to explain it. In corporate objectives and goals, it takes you about 80% of the time in order to achieve them. But the reactive work, what you do with it, is just about 20% of the time. Same thing also, if you're doing an SBU plan, same Pareto principle sets into it. Spend some 20% of your time planning those particular things so you can achieve as much results as possible. Now, at the corporate level, you have, at the SBU level, most of those strategy sessions that you have are referred to as low priority. Why do we say so? Because already the corporate strategy has been set. And remember, the SBU strategy is an extract is an extract, is taken from the corporate strategy at that point in time. All right. Now, the second thing we need to consider in your planning process is your strategic planning process. Now, what is the planning process when you put it into action? I have a 4 phase here to help you out. At the planning base is where you do your external and internal assessments. The external assessments are things like your PERSTEL. You gather data. This is why sometimes you use consultants. You ask them to gather data for you. What is the economy saying? And when you're looking at the economy, you look at the microeconomy, you look at the macroeconomy, depending on the target market you're speaking to at that point in time. You're looking at the economy, you're looking at inflation rates. Beyond the inflation rate, you're also looking at your exchange rates. Today, our FX is going up and down. In 2015, I was doing a process improvement project, a business process improvement project for a particular organization, Nosak Farms. Nosak Farms imports palm oil and then refines it into vegetable oil and sells it. In that particular year, it was a period when we had the dollar rate go from 180, 190 to 500. Meanwhile, their strategy session the previous year, just 2 months ago, was based on 180, importing oil at 180, palm oil at 180. Now the price has tripled, the cost of production has tripled. So in your planning, you must check the external environment. What could change in the environment and how can that affect you? Because of that rise or change in exchange, it affected production. The volume they expected to produce, they did less than 20% of it that particular year. You can imagine how much investment they planned to make. And because of it, they had limited revenue and could not make that particular investment. Political, whenever there's a change in policy in your environment, it is going to affect business that particular year. An example is the banning of importation from some of our borders. That affected a lot of business. Assuming your primary business is into rice, you're a trading organization, you're into rice, and they banned the importation of rice. Do you know that will set you back seriously? You need to go back to the drawing board and decide whether you should still remain business decision. Remember business strategy, whether you will still remain in that particular space or change at that point in time. There are other issues in your PERSTEL, like change in technology. Change in technology affected a lot of us. See when Uber showed up, the way it changed the entire playing field. Red Cap disappeared from Lagos because of it. All right. The same thing also happened when Jumia and Konga showed up. It gave a run to all other physical stores. Most of the mega physical stores suffered. An example is Mega Plaza. It was almost a ghost town at that point in time. But gradually, they are beginning to work on some of these new technologies and buy into it. Park and Shop, I think that's what it was called in the past. They also struggled. What did they do? They had to reinvent themselves and change their strategy and their direction and rebranded themselves as SPAR. And so they were able to survive at that point in time. There's also the issue of ecology, perhaps the weather, the change in the environment and stuff like that. And it's affecting us, especially if you're in the agricultural line of business. That will also give you some serious concern. You have to go into irrigation because what rain level has dropped below what is accepted at that point. Then we also have legal issues and social issues that affect you. An example of social issues is the absence of qualified workers to work. Patricia, I'll come to you. Qualified workers to do their work at that point in time. So you look at the social environment, a lot of graduates, you have more graduates from the university today, but they are not qualified. They do not have the competence to be able to be hired, all right? They are not employable as the case may be. You cannot use them effectively for the work you do. So you end up hiring graduates and then you start training them again at that point in time. Then you also have brain drain. You have a lot of people checking out of the country. Canada is calling and they are attracting quite a lot of people at that point in time. So that's social issues that you see. In the work environment, you're beginning to have more younger people in the work environment who are not so experienced, who are highly spirited and are very, very engaging as the case may be. So you have to change your leadership style. You have to change your managerial style in order to work with these people. Those are external issues that are facing you. Yes, Patricia?
So with respect to the environment, I think the issue of COVID and how it's sort of catapulted everything from face to online. And so I just brought that up because even, banks, I saw that banks were putting out more adverts to do with online business, and I mean, Stanchart, so many branches in Lagos, and everything now is online. So I think this issue of I know you talked about, you need to be able to have your vision, but in the pace of change now, it's making, and with this, the way COVID has turned everything upside down, it's made me wonder, can you really have a vision? You might have a mission, but can you really have a vision? Because it's just been taken out of people's hands, hasn't it? The environment has taken over.
Okay, thank you very much. That is valid. The randomness of the external environment can be a challenge, right? But even within that randomness, with data, you can do some measure of planning, all right? No plan at all is more deadly, right, than some form of plan. What you just simply to do, remember I said your strategy must be flexible. So as the environment changes, you go back to the drawing board and readjust that particular plan. The only thing has changed right now, amongst other things, is the mindset and the platform. The platform initially was brick and mortar. So almost everything happens in a physical location, right? But it has changed in terms of physical to online. So you need to reconfigure your business. A lot of consulting firms were struggling during the COVID season, all right? And some of them have not finished coming out of it at this point in time. A lot had to reconfigure themselves from a standpoint of their resources and assets to deploy online. They also have to reschool, retool themselves in those particular areas. Till today, our mindset is also gradually trying to change. And then we are going online. We're also learning how to do online. It's not like online hasn't been there before, but COVID, like you say, forced us very quickly to adapt and change and welcome that thing. So you could have a vision. For example, the institution that say they want to be number one in the industry, that vision doesn't have to change. They can still pursue number one, but the platform on pursue number one is what has changed at that point. An example is technology has changed. The social structure has changed. And by the way, the COVID issue is a social issue. It is not environmental issue. It's a social concern. Pandemic is spread by individuals, and so that is social. So we can adapt and change, and then we can survive based on that particular adaptation in order to achieve some basic results from it. Okay. Thank you for that contribution. Then the internal environment. You also have to do an assessment of your internal environment. When you do an assessment of your internal environment, what you're doing is a SWOT analysis. And in your SWOT analysis, you're checking at your strengths, you're checking at your weaknesses. Your strengths and your weaknesses are internal to you. The strategy you're trying to define expects you to be good at some things. For you to be successful in that strategy, you must be good at certain things. If you are good in those particular things, it's a strength. For example, execution, winning contracts, signing off projects, relationship management, those are internal strengths. Also, those things that you're supposed to be good at, there may be some of them that you're not good at, that you're struggling to be able to survive in those particular areas. An example of such could be competition. Your competition is stealing your staff because of the competence level that they have found in you. Your high level of competence is an attraction to competition. Your inability to retain staff is a weakness. Poor management style is a weakness. And so anything you're supposed to be good at doing and you're not good at doing it is a weakness to you at that point in time. Now, within those SWOT analysis, there's also opportunities and threats. Opportunities generally refer to things that you're currently not doing, you haven't started doing, or you're not doing very well. That if you pay attention to it, it's going to be a game changer in the results you're currently getting. So there are opportunities in the market. For example, there are new markets, new industries you can enter that you've not entered. There are new franchises you can go into. Okay, there are changes in government policy you can take advantage of. There is a competitor that is struggling or that is dying or closing business, and you've not taken advantage of their market, so you can corner their market at that point. Those are examples of opportunities. Threats are things external to you that are risk, that once they crystallize, they can wreck your business. They can shut down your business at that point in time. So those are threats. Now, those are external, internal and external analysis, assessment that you're supposed to do. At the end of doing this analysis, you should come up with what we refer to as your corporate profile. This is the profile of the organization the way they are now. Then you also pay attention to, there are certain assumptions and there are certain priority issues you need to pay attention to. Those are the things you look at. In the first part of your planning process, you are looking at the question, where are we now? What do we look like now? What's our current profile? In the second phase of your planning process, you then look at what results do you want to achieve? Where are we going? Where do we want to be? What do we want to achieve? In this case, you're not looking at your vision. You begin to validate your vision, validate your mission. You develop objectives that we want to pursue. As we make progress into the future, we want to be known for this. We want to achieve this level, all right? Those are objectives that the organization wants to achieve. We want to be present in all geopolitical zones. We want to be able to enter most markets, as the case may be. Those are corporate objectives. Those are objectives you'll be pursuing at that point in time. The third one is, how will you get there? Now you're clear about where you are and you're relatively clear about your future, where you would like to be. All right. The next question is, what strategies do you need to put in place? The how, in order to get to that particular place and then achieve what you want at that point. 4, now you have created the strategy. You have to break the strategy into action plans. Action plans are short-term things you need to work on. You break your objectives into short-term, mid-term goals that you're going to pursue at that point in time. What must we do in order to achieve it at that point in time? Who in the organization must do what in order to drive it? What is HR's role? This is where, if it is a corporate strategy you're working on at that point in time, you begin to break it into departmental strategy. What is finance role? What is marketing role? What is production role? You begin to break that particular corporate objective to the various departments. This stage 4 is called cascading. You now cascade from the corporate to the business, from the corporate to the departmental plans at that point. If it's a business plan if it's a business strategy you're working on, you then cascade it at this point in time into actions for various product lines, if you have different product lines, or for various supports that you're going to need in order to achieve those particular results. At the end of your strategy, right, you must pause to review and monitor and check whether we're doing very well. We usually recommend that strategy review should happen at least quarterly. Every 3 months, sit back, ask the same questions you asked at the beginning to confirm whether we are able to achieve the things we wanted to achieve at that point in time. Okay. Yes, you're definitely going to get the slides. Whatever you see, Patricia, whatever you see on this screen, you're going to get it. All right.
I have another question. Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
So with the number 5 review, it's usually the case that people tend to do internal reviews and they're never as thorough because people have vested interests. I'm just wondering about how can one, if you're an SME, how can you get a review done that's as objective as possible? In larger companies, you can bring in the KPMGs or whoever to do it. They charge quite a lot of money. How do you address the issue of review in a smaller organization that is, that is sort of being careful about its budget? I know you said this is a process that has to be done, but the money has to be available for the enterprise. So how do you conduct a review that is as objective as possible?
Okay, so two things. If the organization, the mid-sized firm, there are 2 things. If they did their strategy with an external consultant, I always recommend that you ensure that the consultant commits to a quarterly review with you. So after the strategic planning session, the consultant must join you for 1 day every quarter to go through your review process with you and make recommendations at that point. So after the retreat with the consultant, So 3 months later, the consultant shows up again for 1 day. Half year, another 1 day. Quarter into the year, another 1 day. Sorry, 3/4 into the year, another one day. So you get the opportunity of 3 reviews down the line at that point in time, which for me, retainership is such a wonderful way to make it happen. But if you did not use an external consultant, then you must be given to self-discipline. All right, you must have a strategy office or a strategy desk or a strategy manager, someone internal who ensures that the necessary data is gathered for review and it is put in the diary and the organization works towards that particular review. It is very important. If not so, there's what we call strategy drift. It begins to happen. All right. If you do not have that time to pause and check, you notice that when you begin to drift, you don't know how far you've gone away. It's like rowing on a boat on the waters. If you don't, from time to time, pause to look at where you're going to, you notice that the waters will have moved you away. Or if you're flying a plane and you don't periodically look at the compass, notice that the wind will have blown you off course. So that review is critical. And what do you need? You need self-discipline. All our pilots have a timeline. Periodically, there's a bell that tells them, check the compass. And every 5 minutes, they look at the compass. And once they check the compass, if there is a 1 degree misalignment, they pull the plane back on course. So also your review sessions, if you're disciplined that particular way, you will make it happen like that. Now, why we recommend having the presence of an external person with you is that sometimes the presence of an external person ensures the consciousness, the objectivity, the attention to detail, the seriousness that the session will require in order to get us all in line. Another way to make the review make more sense so that everything works very well is to invite 1 or 2 board members to join that particular corporate review. The presence of the board member makes management and the rest members of the team to pay more attention and do a better review at that point. So that's some of the things we have seen in the past that has worked with reviews. Okay. And don't get us wrong. When we say monitor and review, we are not referring to your monthly performance reviews. Those are performance. You're just checking performance and you're just checking your KPI results as the case may be. Those are not strategy reviews. Strategy reviews, you go through the entire strategy document again and ensure that the assumptions we use to create the strategy are still apt. And also to ensure that implementation is still in the right direction at that point. So those are 2 major things, 3 major things: the assumptions, the direction, and then the execution. So you ensure that we are still working on those particular things at that point in time. Okay. So data collection in the first phase. This is me coming back to your planning base here. Adora, your hand is up.
Hello, Joe. Yeah, okay. I'll just ask a very quick one. I'm aware that sometimes different tools can be used when doing the review, things like a balance scorecard, for instance. And I just wanted to know the place of tools to support reviews.
Okay, so it's usually the maturity of the organization. Some organizations are matured enough to use balance scorecard, so they are already given to, if the organization is already given to proper performance management, then they can do balance scorecard. But if it's an organization that is still young on performance management, then the balance scorecard is a bit heavy, is a bit complex for them at that point in time. So they can just focus on KPIs. Just have a set of KPIs that covers everywhere that they need to focus on. All right. But at the board level, the focus is always MBO, management by objective. We don't do balance scorecard at the board level. So you do MBO. That's a tool you use most probably at that particular level. Now at corporate level, the balance scorecard is the best tool. And we encourage organizations to mature quickly to be able to use the balance scorecard because it is robust enough to capture every part of the organization. Then at the business level, you can get away with order. You can just do KPI at the business level. At the functional and departmental levels, KPIs are enough. You can just do KPIs also. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. So we said at the, where am I drawing? I wasn't supposed to draw. Okay, so we said this is where we are in. We looked at the planning phase. So at the planning phase, when we're asking where are we now, what are we looking at, okay? If you look at the planning phase, what you need to do is to collect data. It's only data that will tell you where you are. Do a historical analysis, do an environmental analysis, and discover where the organization is at that point in time. What kind of data should you capture? One, go to finance. Capture all our financial data in the past 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, preferably minimum 3 years history, so you can see a trend, what has been happening across the past 3 years. What data should you capture from finance? Capture our P&L, capture our revenue, capture our balance sheets, capture our cash flow, and then capture the various ratios, financial ratios, liquidity issues, current ratios, and all those things. Capture all those particular financial data. 2, go to your production. Capture your production data. What is the, if you're a manufacturing concern, what is the installed capacity of the plant, of your manufacturing? What is the current production? All right, are we at 50% of the installed capacity, 70%, 100%? Okay, if you're in, go to your marketing department, capture our market share, information about our market share, our market presence, our brand significance, our brand awareness in the markets. Go to sales. What's our sales record? Okay, what's our credit history? What's our target market that we're selling to? Who buys the most from us at that point in time? So grab all those particular data, bring them in. Then go to the other departments. You may gather a few information. One of the other critical departments you should go to is HR. Gather data about people, all right? See what our workforce has been and how that workforce has evolved in the past 3 years. What is the spread of that particular workforce around various departments? What's our current performance? What's our current attrition rates, okay? What's the current leadership style and management style in the organization? Gather all this particular information. They will give you historic insight about the organization. Then, if you have access to external information, your environmental scanning, you can then get data from outside your organization, and also perhaps also get data from your competitors and see what is happening with them at that point in time. Then challenge conventional wisdom. Business doesn't have to be as usual. So during this particular planning phase, for everything you present on the dashboard, on the presentation slide, keep asking, how can it be changed? How can it be changed? Those are questions you lead into your strategies planning session when you're planning for the future at that point in time. Then provide insight for the future. What is the data telling us about tomorrow? If you look at your 3 years historic trend, can you extrapolate into the future? If we continue as is and nothing changes, what will happen in the future? All right, so let me just quickly change that. So assuming you have drawn a chart and your chart is looking something like this, and this is where it stopped, you can actually do a line of best fit and say that if we continue, this is what our future is going to look like. But perhaps this is a trend that you don't like, you want to reduce it. So what you should be looking at, what should we do in order to curb this possibility, this gap that is going to happen as we move into the future? And more importantly, how do we reduce this area? Okay, how do we reduce this area? Okay. Then you identify your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities and threats. That's your SWOT analysis we said earlier at that point. So you do that particular analysis in order to ensure that you are properly prepared for the future. This you can do alone, and this you can do with an external consultant who appears to understand your organization. If you're going to use a consultant to run a strategy session, we always recommend, please engage the consultant at least 1 week before the strategy date. At least 1 week before the strategy date. Earlier the better. Because this data that we mentioned here, the consultant will need to gather those data. And when you engage them too early towards the date of that, you notice that they come up with more of external data than an internal data. And so there is limited insight about the organization at that point in time. Okay. Then what is the result required? Where do we want to go to? Okay, here is the components of your mission statement, your vision statement, and also your values in your organization. You articulate these things and become very clear with them at that point. And then we say, come up with the objectives. So what is the overarching objective that we want to pursue? We want to be number one. Number one in what? Number one when? Number one, by what means? Okay, so if you come up with an objective that says, I want to be number one, you begin to break down number one. Number one in which area? Sector, industry, product line? How do you want to become number one? All right, you begin to develop those particular things. And so you feed into that particular strategy. What are the things you need in order to achieve this? How do you monitor progress? How are you going to check progress? Like the questions that just been asked, what tools do we use in order to monitor progress? It must be a tool that the organization welcomes and they are easy with in order to work with those particular tools at that point in time. Then at implementation, you have your tactical action plan. What are the specific tasks that we must work with? How about the responsibility matrix? Who is responsible for what? Is the head of HR responsible for all people issues? Or do we drill down beyond the head of HR to the head of the units within HR, the head of recruitment, the head of payroll, the head of performance management? At what point do you stop the responsibility level? What are the timeframes? What are the outcomes we expect to have? All right, at that point in time, you must be clear about this at implementation stage. Okay, then what are the various roles? Who does what? What are the clear roles that needs to be done? Okay, where does the handshake happen in those particular roles? So I do not drop the ball within the organization. Where finance says that, well, we have provided the money, they just did not invest it. Or people in production says, well, we have made the product, but the sales people did not sell. Or the sales people said, well, the marketing people say we have promoted. It's the sales people that did not take the product out to go and sell. So you have to be clear who is responsible for what and where those roles stop at that point in time. How about plan B? You need a plan B. So that in case if your primary plan fails, you can switch into the mode of the alternative plan immediately in order to deliver that results at that point in time. Then we'll say review. At the end of the period, check for the level of progress that we're doing. Establish the basis for alternative plans. If there's a plan B, we're not making progress enough, and you want to introduce a second plan, what will be the basis for establishing that second plan? Why do you want to establish a second plan? What are the variances, the thing that didn't work, for which you're trying to establish a plan B at that point in time? Controls. You also need to control drifts. We said so earlier, all right? How are you going to control the things that are happening in the organization? How do you control execution, especially execution, to ensure that we're executing within the process that is expected before the execution starts, during the execution, and after the execution? What are some of the things we need to look at in order to ensure? Why before? Before, you need to put certain things in place to ensure that there is no wastage of resource in the organization, to ensure that there are no excuses for non-performance. All right. During the execution, you monitor. Are there people that needs to be coached? Are there resources that needs to be reassigned, reallocated, as the case may be? And after it, you also need to celebrate success to ensure that we've done well at that point in time. Then the last part is your outcomes. What exactly do you want at the end of your strategy session? At the end of your strategy implementation? Simple, better leadership. Development of strategic thinking and implementation skills. Those are the things you need. Better allocation of resource and responsibilities, because that strategy session helps us to think through in the resource allocation at that point in time. Identification of short and long-term attention areas, critical areas that require attention for us to succeed in those areas. Increased recognition as a differentiator of the results that we want. Then consistent, sustained success as opposed to marginal success at that point in time. Then clear picture of how the trends will impact our future. Okay, agreed upon direction, what direction we're going towards, and then clear definition of your mission, your vision, and your values. All this you must put together. Then specific clear plans on how you intend to improve your performance at that point in time. Then development of team behavior. All team members must work together to be able to work and deliver these results. Your strategy session also drives decision making. It improves the decision science in the organization, so we're able to achieve the best results we want at that point. Thanks. So any questions on the structure we've gone through now? If you have any question, you can type it or raise your hand. I will take it from there. I'd like to look at your execution now. At the end of the historical analysis we mentioned earlier, one of the things you discover is that there are certain areas we are doing well. They are the high points, all right? And there are certain areas we are struggling with, we're not doing very well at that point in time. So in both ends, what do? You end up improving the results. You try to focus on improving the low ends in order to achieve as much as possible. Now, we spoke about you doing an environmental scan. Here is a template that we normally use when we do an environmental scan. So you identify your area of analysis and identify clearly what you see in that area. For example, political. If you look at the political area, and so you hear that a particular political party has taken over power. Maybe one of your primary clients is government, and you hear that a particular political party has taken over power. That information, what does that mean to you? Is it positive information or negative information? If you're in good relationship with the previous government at that point, then that's a negative information, because it means you have to rebuild relationship at that point in time. If you hear that somebody you know, your organization knows, has been appointed to head something, then that's a positive information. All right. If you hear that there is a policy that is good for your organization, perhaps government has released something. Some time ago, government says that you can now import tires into the organization, into the country. That was a negative information for tire manufacturers within Nigeria. There was also a time when they banned the importation of certain age of Tokumbo cars. That's a negative information for some of the car sales organizations, because it means that the purchasing power of people will not be strong enough to buy the much more newer cars. But guess what? That's a positive information for those who sell brand new cars, because it means it will force those who used to buy some of those relatively fairly new old cars to buy the new one. So you do your analysis case by case. Now, when you finish this analysis with the positive and negative, you now come to prioritization. Of each of these internal analysis we've done, which one will receive the highest priority from us? And your reason for giving it a high priority is the impact it has on your strategy and your success of that particular organization at that point in time. There's also external analysis. Sorry, I just did internal analysis. There's also the external analysis. In the internal analysis, you could have also done your internal organization, your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, your threats. You finish all those analyses and you bring them to the forward at that point in time. The another tool you also work with is your SWOT analysis. And your strength is something that we have, right? Our competition does not necessarily have. That's your strength. And that particular thing is also something that your competition cannot easily get or copy from you. That is strength. An example is having highly talented individuals. Maybe you have the best of the staff in the industry. That's a strength. Competitors don't have it. Even if they try to get it, because of your retention, your ability to retain your high-performing staff, it is difficult for them to get that particular thing. At a point in time in the banking industry, branch network was considered as a strength. And it is difficult for banks to easily overnight open branches. The approval process takes a while. The cost of renting a place or buying a land and building a branch or reconfiguring a branch takes a while. Sometimes it takes almost 1 full year to set up a branch at that point in time. So that's to help you understand that that's what we mean by it is a bit difficult if you don't have that particular strength. The weaknesses are something that your competition has that you do not have or you cannot easily get. That's a weakness. And the same argument and conversation can be had on what we've just said about our policy. Opportunities. What are the overall issues outside your organization that, based on what you have scanned, tells you that you should be concentrating on? Areas you should pay attention to. Those are opportunities. And those particular areas sometimes may be different from what you're used to doing at that point in time. And it helps you to do more and achieve better results also. And so this will help you at that point. Then threats. What can potentially get in the way of success? What is the risk ahead of you that can prevent you from achieving the results you want to achieve at that point in time? All right, that can prevent you from achieving the success you wanted, for which if you don't do anything at that point in time, is going to affect the results that you will have gotten at that point in time. So that's an example of what to look at in terms of your strengths and weaknesses. And this can help you, if you make the analysis very well, to be prepared to engage the market, to address any concern that you see at that point in time. And then you're ready to deal with these particular issues head on as they come before you also. Okay, so that's your SWOT analysis, all right? And usually your SWOT analysis comes in a template like this. So you write down it, to the left you have your strengths, and to the right you have your weaknesses. Those are called internal factors. All right. And the external factors are opportunities and threats, as you have it below at that point in time. So those are your external factors, right? And then you focus on those particular areas. Now, to the left, you have your strengths and opportunities. They are positive. And then to the right, you have your weaknesses and threats. Those are negatives. Now, let's look at an example of a SWOT analysis. Here is a SWOT analysis of a particular company. Here is an example of questions you're going to ask if you're running a strategy session. You ask these questions and make sure you answer all these questions. All right. Question number one, what do we do well? What about our businesses do we feel proud of? This is your strengths. All right. What traits or abilities does this company have that will help us to reach future success? What do our customers and staff say about us? These are issues of strength. Your weaknesses, on the other hand, ask questions around what aspects of our business do we need to improve upon? What makes our company vulnerable to threats? What traits or abilities of the organization are weak that we should not condone? What frustrations, right, or disappointments do we or our customers encounter when they do business with us? Opportunities. What trends or events are creating more opportunities locally or globally for us? What changes in technology can we take advantage of? What government policies are in effect that could have a significant positive influence on our company? Then what cultural or social changes are creating opportunities for our company at this point? So those are the various things. Threats. What obstacle are we facing in the environment? What market trends affect us? And then in what is changing with respect to technology that can be a threat to us? So these are some of the questions you should ask during your SWOT analysis. There are similar questions also that you should ask when you're doing your personal analysis at that point in time. Again, when you're done, you begin to develop your primary objectives. Remember, I would say in the second phase, when you look at your mission and vision, you should come up with the objectives. So you develop your primary objectives. Which of these objectives have a high priority? Which ones are tactical? Which ones are strategic in your delivery? Now, what are the perceived barriers to executing this particular strategy? What are corporate barriers? What are the issues we have from corporates? All right. What are the concerns we have at the branch level, at the SBU level, at the functional level? How about at the group level and at the team level? So you identify all those barriers and put a plan in place in order to address those particular barriers. Then you begin to develop your worksheet, your action plan, because you need to address those particular barriers. That is the only way you will succeed with your strategy implementation. And your action plan must have the objectives, your situation analysis, your strategy to address those particular situations, the barriers to the outcome, and then your resources. What resources do you need in order to achieve those particular things? And then a summary of plan B in case if plan A fails at that point. This action sheet can be put in Excel with all these things listed as headers at the top of your action sheet at that point. Then your implementation schedule. Who is responsible for what? For you to be able to implement your strategy. What are the action items? Who is responsible for it? What date must it be done? And what is the expected outcome? Now, the responsibility, in some cases, you put departments. In some cases, you may know what unit in the department or who in the department is responsible for that. So you put that particular name also. Please, we always recommend that you should not just use people's name. In small organizations, you can use people's names. But in large organizations, it is important that you use the offices, okay? The roles that are responsible for those particular tasks. Why? Because people can move. And when they move, the next person that takes over should take over those roles and responsibility at that point in time, all right? And then, of course, you conduct the test. Now, the plan test is the plan sniff test. Look at the plan very well. This is our strategy plan. Is it realistic? Is it doable, given the resources and the kind of organization that we have at this point in time? Is the plan simple enough? Can you explain it to the janitor in the organization? Can you explain it to the office assistant so that they can understand what your plan is at that point in time? Is there some sequence in it, step 1, step 2, step 3, all right? Does it flow properly within the organization so you can produce the results that you want there? Then is there a plan B, a contingency plan to what you have planned to achieve at that point? Will we know if we are off track or we are on track at that point in time in your strategy planning session? Then finally, is the plan creative? Would you be able to achieve the results you expect at that point in time? And then finally, were all issues and facts taken into consideration before implementing this particular strategy? Once you're able to answer this, you're good to go. Then you have a plan that is workable, and then you can implement it. Then your implementation and monitoring. How do you ensure you implement and monitor? How and to whom are you going to communicate these objectives? One of the mistakes we make at the end of strategy sessions is that when we come back, the strategy only remains with management, senior management, and it is not cascaded to the rest of us. You must call a village meeting. Rule 1, whenever you finish strategy and come back, you must call a village meeting and have the executives explain the new feature, the new direction of that particular strategy. That way you can create a buzz, you can create excitement and a buy-in behind that particular strategy for everybody to work with you. If possible, combine that village meeting with some kind of cultural activities. Get people some t-shirts, get them some face cap, get some face painting, whatever it is you're going to do. You're not going to do a 3 days retreat, but just that half day you spend with them at that point in time. Ensure you create a buzz that people are excited. They are raving that this is the way to go. They are feeling excited. That way, implementation will be easy for the rest of the year when you begin to run at that point in time. Then which of your team members are you going to carry along, and what roles will everyone play? Are there gaps? What training will be developed? What training will be necessary in order to ensure that we achieve that particular feature? What kind of coaching, mentoring that needs to be put in place for those who are not strong in that particular? Sometimes it is not an issue of skill. The employee has the skill, but his skill is at a lower level. So it's not training. Training will not address it at that point. He needs some coaching. He needs some on-the-job assistance. He needs someone to be behind him, to mentor him and guide him, to encourage him to move forward at that point. And that's the way to achieve that particular result. So sometimes you may need an executive coach. Invite coaches to work with your executives to encourage them to move forward, especially if this is a weakness we'll notice in our SWOT analysis. Then how often should results be reviewed? Some organizations do monthly. They combine it with their monthly performance review, but like we've said here, let's try and do a little bit longer at that point in time. So strategy is a continuum. Your team is never there. They are always getting there. So there's nothing like, we have arrived, we have achieved our strategy. No. It is always a journey that will continue to pursue at that point in time. And there are constant interval and external changes that will continue to affect you and your delivery of your strategy. So put that in mind as you progress with your strategy to ensure that you are able to get whatever it is you want to push forward and then achieve the results that you want at that point in time. Okay. So having said this, a few caveats as we wind up this particular area and section. Together, you are capable of doing anything that is significant. You can achieve results in those areas. If there's any question, again, as usual, I invite you to share your questions, and we shall respond to them. Now, here are 5 steps for you to have a successful strategy retreat. First, prepare and review. I'm going to the administrative part now. I'm finished discussing the main strategy. I'm now discussing the administrative part. First, you must prepare and review. Before the retreat, before you go for the retreat, please do some homework. Are all those who are attending, have them review your strategic plan and think about it before they show up. Don't just allow your strategy team members to show up for the strategy and then nothing was read, nothing was prepared. In some organizations, their major problem is that they want to change the game, they want to change direction. What you do is you find them resources and material. That's why you should use a consultant. They will dig up some materials that they should use ahead of that particular session. Sometimes some have found it necessary to read things like Blue Ocean Strategy as a means to prepare people's mind before they get to that particular session. All right. Are you on target to implement your strategic plan? Are you currently hitting your milestones? Ask your team members to do their own internal research at that point. It is often helpful to hand out a discussion paper to everybody to prepare a presentation. Let them come on that day. Let them come and present what is happening in their department at that point in time. It may also be useful for you to get inputs of various issues from the rest of the employees that will not be attending the strategy session. So distribute some questionnaire, ask questions, and capture information that you can analyze and bring to that particular strategy session. 2, set an agenda. How will the strategy session run? What will be the sequence of activities in that particular strategy session? What are the side attractions you're going to have in the strategy session? If your strategy session is residential, where you lodge people at that point, then you must put a lot of side attractions. For example, some games, some sporting activities, some team building and team bonding activities at that point in time. Maybe you want to include an early morning aerobics. All right, you need to include some team building in-house session that you people can do. If you're doing it, it is an away day, somewhere far away from where you are, and there's an open environment, then get a consultant who is good with managing team building activities to get them involved in that particular area. Ahead of time, send the staff to the venue to go and already plan the various rooms and allocate it to names of individuals properly at that point in time. Make all payments you need to make. Make arrangement for all feeding for each of those particular days and the timing of each of those particular things. So I would not end up running a strategy session, and when it is time for tea break is not ready. And usually the consultant will say, okay, let's just carry on. When the tea comes, we can take it. Unfortunately, when we carry on, people are not pulling their weight and their energy anymore, and we'll get poor results at that point in time. So as little as those small things can affect the quality of that particular session. How about souvenir materials? Are you going to have some notebooks? Will you want to brand those notebooks before them? Will there be some t-shirts? Are you going to brand those particular things? Or some, maybe not t-shirts, some polos, some shirts, whatever it is you're going to give staff that will help them feel connected to what is happening at that point in time. Set that particular agenda. Consider making time for breakout sessions also. So it is not one straight class. We can break out into small breakout rooms so that they can go and brainstorm on various sessions and then come to the big house and present that particular thing. If you run a 3-day strategy session, you're most probably going to have 3 breakout sessions. Okay, identifying various things at that point in time. And the agenda should also include sufficient time to discuss and take involved in other tasks that we have mentioned. Okay, so I've just discussed the logistics and the things you need to put in place in that particular logistics. Again, best recommendation is to hold your strategy session away from your office. 1, 2, away from the city where the office is. 3, hold it in a garden-like environment. So consider those 3 things. 1, away from the office, 2, away from the city, and 3, preferably in a garden-like environment. And that's what you should do. 4, at the retreats, celebrate. Okay, use it as an opportunity to celebrate people who have done well for you in the past year. It usually helps everybody to be more excited and engaged during that particular celebration. Pat people at the back, give some people gifts, right? There was a particular retreat I was privileged to be hosting, and in that particular retreat, the chairman of the board came with 2 brand new cars. Gave the first one to the high-performing manager that contributed the most to last year's results, and gave the second one to the employee of the year. Shockingly. And it was the organization was agog at that point in time. In another session, it was a law firm. The CEO of the organization came with 10 iPads. Then it was iPad 2, 10 of those brand new devices. And we created different games and different activities. The most person that contributed during the session, the person that was there on time, there were different things that we showed up with, and people were winning things. It was just like one happy family. Make sure your retreat is also like that. So it's not just strategy. We're just talking about the future of the organization, and there's no time to unwind and bond amongst the team. And then the third experience I have is in one particular strategy session where the consultant that was running, I wasn't the one running that particular session, but I learned from it. The consultant that was running it took permission from the MD and requested that the top senior management should play a game with him and grant people favors that they ask for, so long as that favor is within their powers to grant those particular favors. And it was announced that anybody that wants anything, that has always wanted something that the organization should do for him or her, should feel free to walk to any of the executives. And the executives were given chairs and tables in different corners. Interestingly, there were 9 executives, the MD, 3 EDs, and 5 general managers. And they asked you to walk up to any executive and ask for anything you want. Some got changes of roles, change of job, change of locations, and some got some fantastic rewards and awards at that point in time. So those are examples of things that create endearment for your team members during your strategy session. Anyway, follow up. It is a good thing to summarize the results of the event and follow up with what we call a post-retreat report. And that post-retreat report is usually a 2 hours or 3 hour session where you bring senior management together in order to share the results of that particular retreat. Unfortunately, most times what we notice is that at the end of the retreat, the consultant just sends in a bound report, a PDF document, or a bound paper volume and sends it in. It is not good for implementation. It is always best to have a physical session. And in today's world, we have an online session where all the executives tie in and we'll look at priorities that was agreed, why they were agreed, how they were going to be implemented, and which unit and who is responsible for it. So finally, there's a commitment and sign off, and then we'll hit the roads at that point in time. Make sure to follow up the retreat as planned to ensure that any task that is agreed, that they are properly implemented at that point in time. Okay? And that will help you to be able to deliver as much as possible in your retreat objective. Yes, Adora.
Thank you very much, Joel. Just a very quick one. I sort of got thrown out for a minute. I missed the very first item. I heard you talk about 2 to 5 with the agenda, logistics, celebrate, and follow up. But the very first item, what was that?
Okay, so the very first one was planning.
Planning.
Yes, you should plan.
Oh, all right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, sure. Okay, so here are tips on how to implement your strategic plan. Now, for you to implement your strategic plan very well, we recommend that you do the following things. Since you have done the strategy, now you have the strategy. How do you ensure you implement well? First, adequate resources, management support, sustained follow-up are crucial to success. Please note the things I just said. They are all on this particular slide. for you to be successful with your strategy implementation. Here, I said adequate resources. One of the reasons why strategy fails is that we do not have sufficient resource to execute it. 2, management support. Sometimes management is focused on another thing, despite the fact that we have a strategy. And then 3, we will run out of energy in follow through. We follow up and see that the things are difficult. We go back to our old ways. These are 3 simple things we can do in order to ensure that our strategy works very well. According to Neron, he said that initiatives in the strategic plan are often seen as outside everybody's day-to-day work. You know, at the end of the strategy session, you create initiatives. So some people feel it is outside their day-to-day work. Management has to reinforce the message that the strategic plan is part of the day-to-day work. So once we finish the strategic plan, it is now part of your day-to-day work. Don't go back to your HR. Don't go back to your finance. That strategic plan is now the new work that we need to do in order to progress at that point. So like we said, allocate resources, adequate resources, in order for you to achieve as much as possible. Employees often don't get the time or support they need to do what they are supposed to do. So senior management should provide that. And some companies make the mistake of thinking that once they are done with the strategic planning, it is over. No, that is when we begin to spend. So when you spend the strategy, it's not the retreats, it's not the food, it's not the venue, that's not the investment. The investment is in the projects, in the initiatives that need to happen at the end of that particular retreat. Take, for example, you finish your strategy retreat and we say we need to put a new performance management system in place. And then you call a consultant to put in place. It's expensive. We cannot spend 5 million naira to pay to a consultant to put a performance management system. But you just finish a retreat, you pay 10 million naira to. You need to think about it very well to ensure that you're getting certain things rightly. And then you put the system in place, okay, so you can achieve as much results at that point. Then assign the team responsible for implementation. If possible, you can create a new committee. Some organizations, what they do is they create a new office, a strategy implementation office or a strategy office. In one of the organizations I worked in, by the time we were done with that particular strategy, it was agreed in that strategic session that the organization should go the balanced scorecard way. They should find one of the good organizations that is into balanced scorecard, partner with the organization and implement balanced scorecard. And that they should set up a new office. They call it the strategy office. And for the first time, that organization now had a strategy office. They now took one of their GMs, one of their deputy general managers, and made him the head of that particular office, and then appointed 2 persons to become strategy analysts to work with that particular individual. And with that 3-man team, they created a strategy team. The primary responsibility of that team is to take the strategy document and go to every department and every unit and ensure that proper implementation is done at those particular levels. Okay. Yes, thank you very much, Nuru. Yes, strategy office. Yes, thank you. 3, schedule regular review meetings. Schedule regular review meetings. Yes, we have recommended the quarterly review meetings, but that is for the entire strategy. You can break the strategy into various departments and schedule departmental strategy review meetings with each department. That strategy office will have that particular engagement regularly. Now, if you do regular meetings, then most probably it's going to be monthly, and then you can have that sessions properly. But just make sure there's enough time, although quarterly is recommended, there's enough time in between meetings for people to have implemented and do what they're supposed to do. Make sure that it is possible in ensuring that there is enough time, and make it into a routine and a cycle. If you want to do monthly, please make sure it's monthly. Last Saturday of every month, then every last Saturday we shall meet. First Monday of every month, every first Monday we'll always meet. If it is quarterly, every first Tuesday of every quarter we'll meet. Just ensure that you have that particular routine so that people put it in their plan. It enters into their diary and they're able to implement that strategy and work with you well at that point in time. Then track your performance indicators, your KPIs. Keep an eye on them. In the office I mentioned earlier, one of the people of the 2 strategy analysts, the person's job is data. The person's job is to gather data and send it to the right unit that is supposed to go to in the organization. And they present it in a dashboard. They continue to update that particular dashboard regularly. Now remember that what gets measured gets done. So you have to have the right metrics, otherwise nothing will happen. Nothing will happen. People will run away from it at that point in time. Yes, yes, yes. The strategy analyst is a full-time job. In fact, that particular, in that organization, the strategy analysts, they are overwhelmed. They are not able to finish the work on time. They are most stretched than any other person in the organization because it requires them to understand each department's strategy. It's as if they are the heads of the strategy in each department. So anytime the department is even having meetings, sometimes they invite them in for clarification to explain the strategy properly and the implementation and the implication for that particular department. So they are always busy. And if it is an organization that have branches in multiple locations, those strategy analysts are always on the road trying to engage at that point in time. Then the head of the strategy is engaging the heads of the department and senior leadership at that point in time. Finally, be agile. So we said so. Is it that once we have planned, we finish planning? No, be flexible, be agile, right? You can't predict the future. Anything can happen at any point in time. You have to recognize that your strategy must be interactive and you must continue to implement changes that you find in the field to ensure that you're able to get the results you want and then achieve the much needed inputs that you need at that point in time, so you can achieve the best results from your strategic planning. Okay. Okay, so any other question? Okay, comfort, yes. Business continuity and strategy analyst, the roles can be combined, but they are slightly different. The roles can be combined. Business continuity focuses more on risk management, right? On risk management than on strategy, as the case may be at that point in time. Okay. Okay, beautiful. So if there are no more questions, let's now look at my last conversation with you. Our last conversation is okay, Nkiri, you need to explain what you mean by cross-functional roles. Yes, you can. E.g., can we set up a project team? Okay, so instead of setting a strategy department, you can actually set up a strategy committee with a strategy committee, and you draw people from various units, so that they can join hands and be able to produce results at that point. But the problem with doing that is that they will not give it 100% attention because of their primary role and primary job. Secondly, another problem with it is that they may not be respected enough, and so they will not get all the support they need to be able to do their job very well. Adora, your hand is up. Before you speak, please, can I take what was written here? I see a major issue Latches face is getting bogged down with operational issues as opposed to strategic issues. What is the way to address this? Then separate operational issues from it. Separate operational issues. Those leaders, just ensure that you have a strategy office. If you have a strategy office, that person can hold it very well. Two, most mid-sized organizations have MD, CEO as the same person. The MD's job is operational, so he is bogged down with operational issues. If you now put CEO on top of the MD, strategy will suffer. Operational issues in organization is like culture. They always swallow strategy. That's why we always recommend that you separate the CEO's job from the MD's job. Now, if the organization is not large enough to make that separation, then the MD must either have a COO where you can push a lot of operational things to, or you have a head of strategy who can, from time to time, pause you and say, sir, we have strategy issues and these operational issues to deal with. Okay. Okay, so yes, you can speak if your hand is still up.
Oh, no, sorry, I put it in the chat. That was it.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah,
Thank
but
you.
I find that really is a major concern. Thank you.
Very true. Now, how do you conduct this, your retreat, properly? First, remember that strategy fails. Your strategy fails. Why do strategy fails? 87% of the companies that were surveyed say that they usually run into what they call store points because of prolonged financial decline. Sometimes lack of finance, lack of budgeting. Organizations that are not able to generate sufficient finance cannot fuel their strategy. 70% of financial decline is because of poor choice of strategy or poor implementation of strategy. And then 50% deliver less than 50% of their financial results that was promised by their strategy because of execution gap, because they are not able to follow through and execute well at that point in time. That is the reason why they struggle with strategy implementation. So strategy generally fails because of this. Either strategy is kept at the executive level, it is not distilled down, or strategy is not implemented well, the discipline of execution is not there, or resources are not properly allocated for that particular strategy, or we did not take an objective appraisal of the competitive landscape. So when we planned, our planning came shortfall at that point in time. So those are the reasons why our strategy will fall. Now, even though strategy retreats promises quite a lot, they are still common and far-fetched. They have a lot of problems. If done well, strategy leads to success and drives the good in the organization. But when it is not done well, sometimes we suffer. So strategy is about defining a set of choices and a direction the organization is going to pursue in. Okay? But it is usually wrong for an executive to walk in and say, I have thought long and hard about this. I have considered various options. Based on my abilities and environment, I think this is the best way for me to go. That is really what strategy is about. But it is wrong for the executive to come and speak alone on this. So strategy must not be one person alone. So all those CEOs that stay in their office and they draw strategy on their paper and come to implement it, it is not very sustainable, because that strategy will only be implemented because their people are focusing on it, because their people are following them in those particular areas. Outside that, the strategy implementation will not work very well. Now, during your strategy development is a question-based approach. This is a question-based approach in your strategy development. You need to ask these particular questions when you're doing your strategy implementation. Question number one, what is your winning aspiration? Because you must play to win. What is your winning aspiration? Where will you play? That's why we asked that question initially. Where will you be playing in? How will you win? What capabilities do you need in order to succeed? And what management systems are required to be put in place in the organization for you to succeed very well? Forgive this slide, it is not very clear, but I'm sure when you get your material, you can see it very well. So it's an integrated cascade on your strategy. What is our winning aspiration? Where will we play? How will we win? What capabilities must we play in? And then what management systems must be in place for us to achieve this result very well? So the right playing field, where are we going to play in, right? Where will we compete? Our geographies, product categories, consumer segments, channels, vertical stages of production. Then the purpose of the enterprise, our guiding aspirations, as the case may be, all right? How will we win? The unique right to win, right way to win, our value proposition, our competitive advantage. Our competitive advantage, are we a low-cost producer? Are we a differentiated organization in the market? Are we driven by customer service? Or are we a niche player where we focus on just a niche? So our competitive advantage is critical. Then what capabilities must we bring to the market in order to win? This will include reinforcing activities and specific configuration of the organization and structure of that particular organization. And then management systems that are required. What is the systems? Like your performance management system, your monthly performance review system, as the case may be, your budgeting system, your structures. What is your organizational structure in that particular organization? And what are the KPIs, the measures that are required to drive and support these things? What are the choices and decisions we have made? This is an integrated way to look at your strategy implementation. And if you follow through, you will be successful in that place. Now, note that the development of your strategy is not only on the discussions you've had during that particular retreat. There are other requirements that should have been put in place before that strategy date. And there are certain things that you continue to put in place even after that particular strategy date. 4 of them, your marketplace data, we have mentioned it earlier. Preparation, you do not want your team members to walk into the strategy session as business as usual, like if it's another Monday meeting. They must have done some preparations ahead of time. Then you must deliberately design the strategy session, all right, in order to be successful. Do not leave anything to chance. According to, I've forgotten that particular social scientist, says if anything can go wrong, be guaranteed that it will go wrong. So plan for anything going wrong at that point in time. Take, for example, plan for the head of the strategy retreat not showing up, being late, running into issues at that point in time. Plan for the materials for that session not being available at that point in time. So you have to plan for almost everything. In fact, we've even had cases where we have to plan for a plan B venue in case we show up on that day and the venue was not ready or was not available for us. There was a strategy session we went to do in TCC Ogere. And when we got that day, we noticed that our planning did not align properly with them. They thought we said that we were going to start on Friday. They didn't know we wanted to start on Thursday. Meanwhile, the location was in use on Thursday. So what did we do on Friday? We had to sit under the tree, in one of the trees in that particular area. They arranged chairs from nowhere, and we started our strategy session under the tree. So that's an example. Plan for such things so you do not run into problems at that point in time. Then document your retreat outcome. What use is it that you run a strategy session or a strategy retreat and there's no documentation? That documentation is the action plan of what we're going to implement and how we're going to make progress as we move on at that point in time. And this is the way for us to succeed. So 10 steps, start with the end in mind, define what success you're looking at, appoint a competent and an experienced strategy facilitator, either an external person or an internal person. But it must be somebody that has respect, that has gained the respect in the organization and people listen to, and is very good with questioning, asking questions. You must prepare an agenda, we said so earlier, conduct in-depth analysis. This is me doing a review and a recap of what we've said so far, and that your analysis must be both internal and external. Build consensus throughout the entire process of the strategy retreat so that everybody is rigorously involved in the conversation of the strategy retreat. So at the end of the day, you are able to deliver the results that you came there to deliver. You are able to achieve what you wanted at that point in time. And then you can be happy and successful that you've done the right thing in order to achieve success in your strategy. Number 6, plan the implementation or execution. Let it be part of the strategy planning phase. Don't finish the strategy and say later we shall plan implementation. It doesn't always work because you can never get all those people together again like you got them together at that point in time and also at the same energy level. Then assign roles and responsibilities to various persons at high level and at mid level. Agree what resources are required and how those resources will be sourced in order to achieve results. If the resources are financial, let finance commit to it. If they are people, let human capital, HR department commit to providing the staffing requirement at that point. Then develop your communication plan. How do you intend to communicate the strategy outcome? I had recommended a village meeting. You can do other things also. You can do other sessions and continuous communication. You can create teams, and every month you communicate a particular team. You drive it through the organization until it is soaked in that particular organization and everyone has understood it very well. Finally, ensure you have a monitoring framework. We have mentioned different monitoring frameworks. You can use the performance management balance scorecard. You can use management by objective. You can use KPI, any one of those. You can have periodic meetings on a weekly basis, on a quarterly basis, on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis. These are the various ways that will help you to review your strategy. Okay, so like put into context, conduct in-depth analysis, plan the retreat, facilitate the retreat, document the outcome of the retreat and the action plan, then monitor and implement. Throughout the entire phase, build consensus and manage with your various stakeholders. So if I were invited to come and run a strategy retreat, this is the document I usually have in my hand. So I print this and I always put it in my hand. So you begin to put information into these boxes down the line. Now it is at the monitoring and implementation phase that most times the consultants are not involved. But if the organization chooses and want to, they can drag the consultants along, especially during the review phase when you're doing your strategy review in that organization. Okay, to achieve success, you need to ensure that you are prepared and every team member, attendee, is also prepared. Make sure that you have data and the data is clean and is of high quality. Facilitate expertise in the strategy formulation. That's the facilitator's expertise. It's also very important in the strategy formulation and in the execution. Then the quality of debate, the rigorousness of debate. Don't say, oh, we're running late. Let's stop arguing. It is not an argument. You're brainstorming. All right. Create enough time for us to empty ourselves during that particular session in order to achieve those results, and then complete your action planning so you can succeed effectively. Thank you very much. This is the end of this particular conversation. I'll take your feedback and other questions. Adora says, if your financial year runs January to December, when is the best time to have your strategy retreat? Honestly, 3 months to the end of the financial year. Once you've ended the third quarter and you've started your fourth quarter, that's when you should be working on your strategy. So that no matter what happens, by the 12th month, the strategy is ready. Full implementation plan is ready. Remember, I said it takes about 6 weeks to execute a strategy plan. So if you don't start at that quarter, let's say, since it is January to December, then by November 1, you should have started your strategy session. So by mid-December, by December 15th or thereabout, it is clear what needs to happen that particular year in order for us to achieve as much results as possible. Yes, okay, more questions? Yes, more questions.
So sorry, can I just expand on my question a little bit?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Joel. So just sort of debating at the moment as to the best time to have the strategy retreat, bearing in mind where we are at already. So this is already end of November. Okay, so I know the ideal situation, like you said, should have been beginning of November. This is where we are at now. Should we now decide to have our strategy retreat now, we then go on holiday for Christmas and then come back. So implementation does not actually start until the new year. So I just want to get your take on that.
Okay, so since the strategy is for the next year, day one usually is January 1. That's when it starts counting. But the beauty of doing that strategy retreat before the year runs out is that as people go away, they have it in their mind as they think of best ways to ensure that they're able to close out on that particular year. Some other organizations defer the strategy until when the year has started. All right. And then they begin implementing somewhere in February or March at the end of their strategy implementation. There's actually no hard or fast rule around it. But the best practice is before the year starts, because strategies are in alignment with financial years. So it's usually best before the season, before the strategy year starts at that point in time.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any other question? Okay. If we don't have any other question, we shall send this slide in addition with four other work tools. You're going to be getting a SWOT analysis. You're going to get a personal analysis. You're going to get 2 other tools that I use for strategy session. You're going to get a sample strategy agenda, strategy retreat agenda. All right. You're also going to get a strategy checklist that you can use. So by the time you get this document, you can use them to plan your next strategy implementation. All right, Kiru. Yes. This particular session will be uploaded on our online platform, ProVersity, and you can always revisit it and play it back as many times as you wish, so long as you've attended this particular program. Exactly, yes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for this session. Jane? Thank you, Adora.
You didn't see my question. You didn't see my question, Joel. Just sort of scroll up a little bit. You'll see my question.
Okay, I'm going up now.
Thank you.
Okay, sometimes pricing really, sometimes pricing, sometimes it is client dependent. As you meet a client, you arrive at something that is workable between you and the client. In some cases, the consultant is so passionate and interested about midwifing an organization that the fees are compromised. In some other cases, the trouble involved in getting the strategy out based on the culture of the organization demands the consultants to price very high. I've also been privileged to run a strategy retreat for what we call a group strategy retreat, where we invite different SMEs together, like 5 to 10 of them with their executives, okay, like 4 persons from each SME, and then you run a combo strategy session. It's still the same model. It takes a little bit longer, but each team walks away with bespoke strategy for their team. So pricing really is dependent on the team you meet. Thanks, Adora.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, but it's good to have a price in mind so that you can work within what you feel that the effort you're putting in is worth for it. Because sometimes strategy retreats are things they are paying for the experience you've gathered as a consultant. So you may just have a benchmark that you work with. All right. And if you choose to go below that benchmark, it is because there's a promise for something else in the organization. There are other deeper things within the organization that you'll be involved in. It is not just a transaction of do strategy and walk away. Okay, thanks everyone. Jane, my task is done.